presence was fitting. It was I, the abstract, and me, the 5-footer. I kicked the mad style, so step off the Frankfurter. Hey, yo, Fife, do you remember that routine that we used to make spiffy like Mr. Clean? Sound better? Okay, all right. So good. Bam, bam, bam.
The museum is very proud to participate in today's workshop for Race the Opera. First of all, a couple of logistical matters. If you have to leave during the performance today, would you please leave from the back of the room? That would be a little less disturbing to the artists. Also, if you do us all a favor, if you could silence your cell phones. Also, we do use a loop system. For any of you who use assisted hearing devices, you can turn that on your device. And for the let me just say that the museum has a long and warm connection to the Stroud family. For me, that goes back to Lulu Stroud Pollard, who, along with her husband Leonard and others in the community, founded the Negro Historical Association of Colorado Springs. The work of that organization continues today with the African American Historical and Genealogical Society. But through the NHACS, we were able to build our collection that tells the rich story of African Americans in Colorado Springs. The story you're going to hear today is part of that collection. Through that work, we were also able to initially publish Invisible People of the Pikes Peak region, a book that many of you may recognize, which was recently republished by the Pikes Peak Library District. Additionally, we have the Stroud story told in 2 different exhibits in the museum. So after today's performance, if you want to go explore more about our collection and the stories we tell, you can go right across the hall to the exhibit Any Place North or West, which is our African American history exhibit, in which the Strouds play an important part. Also, you can go down to our sesquicentennial exhibit, COS at 150, to learn about both Lulu Pollard and the NHACS, and as well as Kelly Dolphus Stroud, who is the featured individual in today's program. So we are delighted to be co-presenting today with the International Brazilian Opera Company in partnership with the Stroud family, this workshop performance of Race the Opera. IBOC is a New York-based nonprofit founded with the mission to develop a diverse new repertoire. Since its founding in 2013, the company has developed 5 works for the opera stage and 6 beyond opera works. Today, you'll have a special experience to see our collection come to life through this kickoff workshop performance. Think of this as an insider's look into the making of an opera and an invitation to participate. You'll hear the core writing team regarding the backstory of Kelly Dolphus Stroud and the artistic process for scene selection. You'll be graced today to hear from Ashley Cornelius, the co-librettist. Ashley is the Pike Peak Region Poet Laureate. You'll also hear from Idris Goodwin, co-librettist, a local award-winning playwright, breakbeat poet, content creator, and arts champion, a 2021 United States Arts Fellow. And now I'm pleased to introduce to you IBOC co-founder and Race the Opera co-art director, Christina Morgan.
Greetings. I'm very happy to be here. My first time in Colorado, all the way from New York City. Since he did that brief introduction of the Brazilian Opera Company, I'll just start with a quick survey. How many people consider themselves opera buffs? How many people have seen an opera in the last year? Musical theater? So, I think this will be a very interesting process for all of you here, considering, your interest in the arts. I like to call this little workshop kickoff sort of from page to stage. I don't think there's many chances where you get to see a creative work, whether it be a novel, a musical, a screenplay, anything. How it starts in the very, very beginning when it's just an idea in someone's head to how it will finish. So hopefully you all will see more of us, we'll all get to know each other, and you'll become sort of participants in this process. So, you're going to see how the sausage gets made, and I hope you like it. Now, I'd like to introduce Mr. Frank Shines, who is serving as our dramaturg for this project. Frank is a descendant of the pioneering Stroud Family Colorado. He is currently leading the development of Race the Opera along with us to tell this untold, amazing, incredibly moving story. The more I learn about it, the more I just want to cry. In a good way, in a moving way. And Frank is a former cellist. He's trained for Olympic athletes. He's a graduate of the United States Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs. He's very rooted and has a lot of love and affection for this community. And truth be told, without Frank, there would be no IBOC, because he sponsored our artistic director's artist visa over 2 years ago. So if you're wondering what the very basic connection is, there it is. I said over 20 years ago. I said 20 years ago. Okay. So I would like to pass it off to Frank, and he will start off our workshop.
First of all, what a great crowd. It's a pleasure to have you all here today. Imagine a world where everyone has an equal place to start in life. And when we heard the word race, we thought about human race. That's really the purpose of Race to God and why we're here today. I'm Frank Shines. I'm the great nephew of Dolphus Stroud. And my grandfather was his competitor, Tandy Stroud. They trained and competed together. What I'm going to do is, first of all, kind of walk everybody through just a short story. And then we're going to go through what we call the backstory. The short story is going to be kind of the arc of the opera itself. And then the more backstory is going to be where we give you a little more insight. And then I'm going to pass it on to Joanna, who is going to kind of take you behind the scenes. And that sausage that Christina was talking about, right? He's really going to kind of walk you through and understand and take it on. Okay, so with that in mind, let's just jump right into it. So, first of all, how many of you heard of the story of Dolphus Stroud? Never heard of it? Probably about half the audience. Okay, that's pretty good. So, about 100 years ago, in June of 1928, Dolphus Stroud competed at the Denver Marathon. And this Denver Marathon was a qualifying race for the 1928 Olympic trials, right? So 8 years before Jesse Owens, before Aaron, right? And all the other races, Tiger Woods and Venus Williams, there was golfers. And interestingly enough, I didn't know anything about this story until I was a cadet between my sophomore and junior year. Okay. So Dolphus competed, he won. However, he was denied funding to travel at that time because of his color. Undaunted, he decided he's going to make it for Boston by foot, hook or crook, and headed across with a 40-pound bag, a golf club, and $20. That was his dream. Somehow made it at the time of the Olympic trials. This was 6 days before the Olympic trial was to start. Make a long story short, he arrived 6 hours at the Charles River just before the race. He spent 2 of those hours walking around the campus and the library of Harvard. He had been accepted to Harvard in 1925, 3 years earlier. Then he spent spent 2 hours going through and wearing a uniform. And he took a great amount of pride in the fact that he was representing the Rocky Mountain region. And he said it was just kind of an impossible thought in his mind that a black man was putting on the red, white, and blue. And it was a quote from one of his notes that we were reading through. At any rate, as many of you may know, he was not able to finish the race due to malnutrition, and he had eaten the last 24 hours. He was exhausted. He collapsed on the 6th lap of the race. So he didn't win. However, there was a gentleman who at that time was a star runner, Joey Ray. And Joey Ray, after he won his heat, came over to Dolphus. And he asked Dolphus, what is your name? How did you get here? What's your story? And he told him and found out that Dolphus had no way to get back home. He said, I hadn't thought about how to return those. He had no money. He knew no one in town. And consequently, Joey, who knew the executive director of the YCA in Boston, pulled out a note, wrote a note, put it in an envelope, and told him to take this to the executive director. They gave him a job. He worked the summer, the rest of the summer, and he was able to pay for his own ride on a train to return back here to Colorado Springs. But that's really the power of community, the power of diversity, and the caring nature of this wonderful country. As a former Air Force officer, obviously, for me, when I heard this story from Lulu, and this was introduced a little bit earlier from Matt, right? I think it was Lulu Pollard, most of you know her by Lulu Stroud Pollard. I received this phone call between my sophomore and junior year, and there's this lady I'd never heard of before. She says, do you know who I am? I said, no. She says, I'm Lulu, your great aunt. Now, do you know the story of your family here in Colorado Springs? And that's when I began this journey that brings us here today in terms of research, DNA analysis, and a special story is for our family, we were separated. And 40 years ago, there was a 2.5-year-old sister who for 40 years we never met. And she's here. She's here guiding with us today. K.D. Stroud, who went by Reverend K.D. Stroud, Kimball Dolphus Stroud, was born on Texas slave plantation, raised there. At age 19, the family moved to what was known as Indian territory. Now, here's another interesting thing. The plantation owner was the grandfather of Katie. Fearing the violence against his family, he helped move the family to Indian territory, as he named it, out of the country to Indian territory, which is now present-day Oklahoma. And that's where he met, K.D. Stroud met what he called the most beautiful woman he's ever seen. And that was Eve. And as many of you know the story, the couple arrived here in 1910 in Colorado Springs, Katie and Lou. They raised a family of 11 remarkable children, one of which was my grandfather, Tandy. Dolphus went on to achieve a number of different things while he was here in Colorado Springs. Went to Bristol Elementary School. We graduated from Palmer. Well, at that point, it was Colorado Springs High School, Palmer. And then he completed his 5-year capstone out at Colorado College, where he studied political science. From there, he went to Georgia, Forsyth, Georgia, his great aunt Jean, who is the subject of the characters of Race the Opera. She was the person who had the vision to say, leave Oklahoma. As they received statehood, there's going to be problems there from Colorado Springs. And she was here in Colorado Springs, all the way to present day. So my daughter, last year she became the U.S. gymnastics champion for Florida, and then later won the 8-state region for the Southeast. And in 2028, we had here we are. So here's the interesting thing. This is my actual DNA profile. The reason why Race the Opera exists today is because I heard these stories, but I was wondering how true these stories were, so I started doing a lot of research. And then once 23andMe came out, and some of the other DNA analysis, I connected the dots and found that the DNA matched up with the stories, right? You can see that. For those of you who may not be able to see very well, all of this light blue area and blue area is my European ancestry, which is about 23% of my DNA, and the rest is from a lot of other places. So that's the story of the Stroud family. That's the DNA profile of myself. I think that's the profile of America. The characters. In the upper left is Dolphus himself. You've heard about him. So obviously he's the protagonist. His Aunt Jenny is of the Creek Nation. Her grandmother marched the Trail of Tears. And so throughout the opera, you'll hear her inspirational voice. When things get really tough, Aunt Jenny is a spiritual guidance and the visionary. In the lower left is Effie. Now Effie, the younger sister of Dolphus, is really the guardian, the protector. She fears for him. She discourages him for taking that journey across country. She fears for his life. And then my grandfather is in the lower right. That's Tandy Stroud. And Tandy is obviously the competitor, but he's also an inspiration in a certain way that you'll learn more about as you learn more about the opera. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Juan. And he's going to take you through the whole architecture and the magic of how an opera was produced.
Thank you. I'm supposed to talk a bit about why opera, which is a question I often get, and then drive a little through the engineering. How do we do to create a musical theater show? An opera, yeah, for us. It's all together. But before, I'm a little emotional. It's really a privilege and an honor to be here. Frank's been a very important person in my life, maybe one of the most important people that I've come across. I was broke, touring in Brazil at some point when everything seemed to be falling to pieces. And at the scene now, this guy who loved my music and he wanted to buy it. I don't have a piece of t-shirt. So he bought a box of CDs and he saved me the first time. And then he sponsored me as an immigrant to this country. And now I'm an American citizen too. And the International Museum Opera itself came to exist because Frank told me when I wrote my first opera, we need a non-profit organization so we could put this together because it takes a lot of people to create a show like this because it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community, a strong community to create an opera. And there's a strong history of the African American opera that maybe we're not all aware of. It dates back to Scott Joplin, who wrote Tremonisca, Anthony Davis, who wrote Malcolm X, Central Park 5, and many other great operas. And now we have Terence Blanchard playing at the Metropolitan, Fire Shut Up on My Bones. Amazing works that have created a tradition that we're part of. So we're not creating anything out of the blue. We're creating something that belongs to a very strong tradition. And as a Brazilian, also we have Carlos Gomes, who was a black Brazilian from the 1800s who became successful in Italy in a time when we still had slavery in Brazil, writing opera. But that doesn't answer the question, why opera? And why not tell this some other way? And my father was an opera aficionado while I liked, jazz and Brazilian music. He used to listen to it a lot, and he tried to convince me about enjoying opera by saying opera is the union of all art forms. We have drama, we have music, there's dance, there's theater, there's visual arts, and it's an opportunity to bring everybody together. And it's a community event. And if you think about those small villages in Italy, we probably had everybody in the theater when we had those big productions. Half of the town would be on stage, the other half would be cheering for Luigi. And what I realized is that Italian opera is really a recreation of something much older. When they started opera, they were trying to make Greek theater again, because we know Greek theater was all sung. We don't know the music, how they used to do. We have the words, but they didn't have musical notation yet. However, music theater is itself a recreation of much older primal rituals when music, theater, storytelling, dance, visual arts, those cave paintings, you all came together into a community ritual, a transformation ritual. And because of this opportunity of bringing music and storytelling and making this a transformational ritual for all of us in this community right here, but also in the larger community where places where we can't take this word, I think music moves the atoms in the walls, and it gives us this opportunity to create magic, such as in these primordial rituals. So that's my why opera. That said, there's an engineering to it. We start with an idea, beautiful story, awful story. I tell you, all soft here. Every time I hear it, it hits me in a very personal way. It's a touching story of personal perseverance and victory against all odds, and it's so inspiring. But just having the story is not enough, because you're talking about bringing a lot of money on the production, a lot of different professionals to collaborate, and we engineer this to be a successful production as long as we do our homework and follow the steps. So that's where is do you have the remote?
The back pocket.
Back pocket. Thank you. Someone's paying attention. Good job. It's actually Cornelius. She knows something we don't know, for sure. So one of the things that we think about when I'm really just a facilitator in this work, I'm a coach to the team, I'm the artistic director of the company, so I'm kind of responsible to saying, yes, it's great, let's keep on moving, or let's get back to the drawing board and think about this again, which is a hard place to sit for me, but someone needs to be there, and it happens to be my role. So the way I advise Frank when he was building the dramaturgical story of the opera was that when we think about successful storytelling structure, we're usually thinking about not like a mountain where you have the peak in the middle and you start in a valley and you end in a valley, but as like an inverted mountain or as an arch. Is there engineers? Any engineers in the house? Not so many, but engineers will know it, because when you have an arch, the place of tension is the column. You know, the place where you have most weight is really in the column. And at the top of the arch, you have the headstone where you can really rest and you know, there's not so much strength there. But if you think of an inverted mounting, that serves also. So you have like a strong moment in the beginning and a strong moment at the end. And in the middle, you can go through that journey, creating, you know, certain parallels that the brain is able to subconsciously assimilate, especially if you have musical ideas that connect this structure in a way that makes sense from an emotional and psychological, but also intellectual perspective. So you have the structure also in your hands, so if you can't read, if it's small writing, you can look at it in your papers. Basically, we try to make the scenes, you know, first connecting to last. So we start with him winning the race for the qualified local race, which is, you know, major unexpected win. The black guy comes in. He was not part of the team. Nobody knew about him. He comes in and he has an easy win. And there's where we establish these characters. We, you know, introduce his family, and that would be also. We're planning on having a white traditional, you know, European kind of chorus that has a specific kind of vocal sound to it, and also have like a gospel, you know, the black chorus also has like a church gospel kind of sound of it. So we can also have these two choruses contrasting and then joining forces, and then maybe singing against each other and cheering, throwing against Dolphus as we move along. That scene should connect in terms of music motives when the composer comes in. But already now with our librettists, they're thinking about this. So the story, you know, also has some verses that will connect top to bottom. And when we get there, there's a sensation of accomplishment that's very strong. And once you begin to see this, and if you watch a film, you will notice that a lot of the great films that we know have this kind of structure, because it's very primordial. It's not something we create, it's something that we learn from experience and from studying great works, really. Second scene, here we go. Second scene is kind of intense, anti-climax almost, because that's when he realizes that he doesn't have the money to travel, and he may have gone to his friends, you know, small community of people who didn't really have much money back in 1920 to help him, and whatever they could give, I'm sure it was a lot for him, but it was not enough for him to cross country. And then that scene also relates to the second to last scene, you know, as you can see, where he actually loses again. So these are two major challenges that he faces, you know, anti-climax kind of thing. The big challenge of knowing that he should be competing in the Olympic trials, and knowing that he can't get there because he doesn't have the means. And then that connects to the second to last scene, the Boston Olympic trials, where he loses because he made the journey, but man is a superhero, but still, you know, he's exhausted when he gets there. There we go. Peak Spike Mountain. That's a spiritual scene that also connects to the third to last scene. This scene is a moment when he goes up the mountain, as Moses did, as Zarathustra did in the story. He meditates, and he thinks about this journey. You know, will he accept defeat before the competition comes, or will he try to do the impossible and get to Boston, no matter what? That connects to the cemetery church scene later in his journey, because there's a moment when he is in Cleveland, Ohio, and Cleveland, right? Cleveland. And he calculates. He's a very smart man. He puts down the numbers, and he realizes that he can't get there. He's in the middle of the way, and it's practically impossible to get there. And at that point, he actually gets a ride, which is amazing. That he's like really one major hitchhike ride he gets at the very last moment when he thought all odds were against him and he wouldn't be able to make it to Boston. And he actually managed to get to Boston because of, as a consequence of this moment, actually, we like to think of this epiphany moment when he's like confronted with the death of his hope, his own personal death, death and transformation, accepting death so he can be reborn or reborn. And so that connection should also be established as the writers are working on the lyrics, or the libretto, as they call it in opera. Yes, scene 4 and scene 6, they are about Dolphus being on the road with a parallel option of Sister Alfie solo singing with the chorus. It's like this movement of being in action, facing obstacles but keep going, And then it relates to the YMCA scene, which is where someone helps him in the story also and gives him an extra win there. So he gets the second win to continue running because he's able to take a shower and rest. Amazing how those little things we take for granted, they can be really important when you're like in a journey like that. And, I might have, in the middle, I'm having a hard time with this thing. Here we go. In the middle is the inverted, it's the valley in the middle of it. That's a moment when the composer may take the time to write something that's on a steady beat. As we know, a great runner won't sprint too fast right in the beginning of it, pacing himself to keep going. So it's a moment when we can actually be with the character and relax a little bit with the story before we go on to the last climb towards the end of the climax. The real climax of the story, which is a kind of negative climax in a way because it's a defeat, but it also makes us think, what is victory, right? Because the man loses the race, but he's like one of the greatest winners I've ever heard about. So after winning, he actually goes on to become an amazing scholar. He creates a running team. They tour Latin America. He does all these amazing things besides being, one of the Katie Stroud, the Reverend, is